Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about using data automation to ensure quality and trust in your analytics system. And our sponsor today is WhereScape. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from David Stodder with TDWI. And after Dave speaks, we'll be joined by Paul Watson-Gover with WhereScape for a presentation and fireside chat. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll receive technical assistance. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or if you wish, you can share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing using data automation to ensure quality and trust in your analytics system. And our first speaker is David Stodder. He's a research fellow with TDWI. And as an analyst, writer, and researcher, Dave has provided thought leadership on key topics in BI, analytics, IT, and information management for over 2 decades. Previously, he headed up his own independent firm and served as vice president and research director with Ventana Research. He was also the founding chief editor of Intelligent Enterprise and served as editorial director there for 9 years. With TDWI Research, Dave focuses on providing research-based insight and best practices for organizations implementing BI, analytics, performance management, and related technologies and methods. With that, please welcome Dave, and I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today on this webinar. I think we've got a good one. This certainly hits at couldn't be a more core issue, I think, for the TDWI community than data quality and how to solve problems there. So let's get going. I'm going to talk today about the urgency to solve data quality issues and modernize practices, process, and technology, sort of set the stage there, provide a little context around that. And then I'll drill into 5 key points for success. And then, as Andrew mentioned, we'll have a fireside chat discussion with Paul after I'm done. So demand, of course, is only accelerating for trusted data. And that really is coming from maybe small systems, analytics systems that your organization may have set up to handle reporting or certain specific BI users, to suddenly you've got everybody, users across the organization, often external to the organization even, who are using applications that are data-driven applications. They're trying to do analytics on their own. Of course, the organization may also have sophisticated analytics moving into AI. And these all depend on accessible, timely, relevant, and accurate data. And there's a business cost associated with it. And if you don't have those things, if users don't have accessible data, they don't have the data that's timely for what their purpose is for the data, and relevancy, obviously, and that it's accurate, that they can count on that data to be accurate. So these are now, if they never were before, they're now key issues in organizations to really solve, to move forward. Otherwise, costs, delays, mistakes arise, customers, partners are upset because you don't have the correct data, yet the problems go unsolved. AI growth, as I mentioned, is one of the things that's driving organizations to try to solve data quality problems. This includes the generative AI and large language models that are is the top news really of the year this year. So it heightens demand for trusted data to drive these kinds of applications. And of course, I'll be talking about how they may be applied actually to the data quality problem in itself. So let's take a look at some TDWI research. Research at best, really 50% are satisfied with data quality. So there's a long way to go there for most organizations. So that's like at the high point. So, and just picking out some research from one of our best practice reports that actually I wrote, we asked which of the following priorities are driving modernization of your organization's data management, analytics systems, practices to achieve faster, more complete, and accurate analytics. And number 1 is, with 57%, improve trust in data quality, accuracy, and completeness. So it's, across the board in the TDWI community, organizations large, medium, and small, the top issues. So 57% saying that. Create a single point of access and management and governance across distributed data. So organizations are have silos everywhere. They have self-service data marts on top of data warehouses. They may have multiple data warehouses, database systems that are dedicated to particular applications or platforms. And so it's become a silo problem. And then inconsistency and people wasting too much time trying to locate this data to be accessible data, much less whether it's accurate and usable or not. And then a lot of organizations are dragged down by inflexible legacy processes. So it may be processes that are associated with one platform, one set of users, one database system, data management system, but not all these require the same kind of data quality treatment. And so it's hard to get a kind of a holistic sense of how to manage data quality. It seems very sort of a cottage thing in the organization. So it creates all the problems that I mentioned in the last slide. So I think one thing to remember is that it's a journey. Achieving maturity and ensuring data quality and trust with analytic systems, it's a journey. You're going to be starting. And so that makes it important to have a process really in place that's a flexible process, is agile, that you can adjust to different circumstances, but also have sort of a holistic view of the entire thing, how they all fit together. So what is data quality as practices really to ensure trust, relevance, actionability, so that it's associated with what the user wants to do or the application needs for the data, and overall fitness for intended purposes. So TDWI studies maturity, and so you can look at our maturity models and see where your organization may fit in those maturity models and things that TDWI recommends to move forward and to move ahead in the journey towards higher data quality. You can find those on our website. So let's see, let me get to the next slide here. Okay, so data quality management, and so that's really setting in place that system of policies, processes, procedures, and governance of data usage to ensure the trust. So making that the goal really, and be able to understand how these different processes, because often in organizations, the data quality tools and processes are diverse. I mean, you may have tools for profiling and matching the data, merging the data. You have ETL tools, certainly, maybe more than one ETL tool for all these processes, profiling, matching, merging, correcting, and then augmenting the data. Like often that's sort of, again, different systems depending on the kind of platform that you have and the type of data you're trying to integrate and associate together and find data relationships. The target is often a single version of the truth to set up, okay, can we get this system of record, the golden record, the master record of data, say about customers or about particular products that we know we can depend on. That's often a very good starting point. Of course, how do these different golden records across the organization fit together is a whole other problem for data quality practices and master data management practices as well. And also for data quality management, it needs to be also not just for data professionals, as the types of users and number of users and their amount of experience with data expands in organizations. It's important to be able to bring non-technical users, particularly stakeholders in the data who may be owners of data sources, data processes that are working with data analytics modeling, data scientists, data engineers, so that they can access a data quality management system and processes to identify and to address data quality issues. And then to be able to make it, they can interact with it and see it, visualization. So a lot of tools today are getting much better at providing visualizations to see what the results are on charts and things like that, to understand the metrics and monitoring of data quality issues, and to give data stewards and data stakeholders insights into data quality so they can solve problems faster. But certainly an emerging trend is the use of, or at least interest in the use of large language models and generative AI for data quality management. And I think AI generally, of course, as it is with really all data management tools, is having a huge impact, and we'll be talking about that in our discussion today. So it's a growing role in driving automation for processes such as profiling, cleansing, validation, completion, enrichment, and this is just moving forward. And so generative AI and large language models being sort of the group of technologies and processes and approaches to using AI is finding its way into this area. One of the big things that generative AI and LLMs can certainly help with is the non-technical users, to enable them to have greater ease of use, be able to use potentially their natural language to interact with the data. They will be interacting with the data, so they can interact with the data quality management system as well. And then using AI as a starting to use the math and use the probability capabilities and to understand patterns in the data, particularly very large sets of data as you're scaling up to, multiple terabytes of data coming in, and be able to do it faster and be more complete and spot inconsistencies to get faster at solving problems. LLMs and generative AI, as we all know, have risks and challenges. It's helpful, but the automated technology can't guarantee data trust. So there's got to be really humans behind it. Human oversight and interaction are critical. Problems, we all know or heard about with LLMs and generative AI, hallucinations, risks of intentional abuse of the data. So that has to be protected too, and why data quality processes really need to go with data governance and data security to kind of set up the whole gamut of things that you have looking at the data to reduce the risk of intentional abuse. And data literacy is important to update users as to what the tools capabilities are, what the automation can do to train the users to exercise judgment, and also really to avoid, I think is a great expression, automation complacency. So thinking that, well, the whole system's automated, I don't have to worry about it, that's not true, particularly regarding data quality and understanding data inconsistency kind of issues, particularly if they're using AI to solve them. Okay, well, I'll get into my 5 key points now. And so first is really around roles and responsibilities. So we are going to talk about automation and technology today, but it really have to set up the roles and responsibilities is really core to having a good data quality management system. We see in our research that it does vary widely among organizations. So here we asked research subjects if there is a clear understanding of individual roles in maintaining data quality in my organization. Well, 34% disagreed, 14% strongly disagree, so the largest percentage are really disagreeing, and 31% are neutral. So again, I think a lot of organizations, you can see there, have progress to be made in understanding what the individual roles are, and understanding, is there a standard, sustainable, skilled team? So is there a team in place? Can you bring people together quickly that spans the lines of business, functional groups, application domains, again, bringing in the key stakeholders to address data quality issues, to solve problems, and to move forward on the journey towards higher data quality? Is there adequate training in place, both for these individuals and for users in general? Is there a process for reporting data quality metrics to stakeholders? So I'll talk about metrics a little bit more in a coming slide, but this is really part of the roles and responsibilities. Are they setting up the metrics to understand that the metrics are going to be accurate? And then communication. Communication is vital across the organization. So here we see organizations in a chart, the second chart I have here. Is there training in place so everyone across the organization who utilizes data understands the importance of maintaining the quality of that data and understands their role in ensuring the expected level of quality? And so we can see here that the largest percentage say there is no training in my company related to data quality. So that's something that needs to be changed in most organizations. So the metrics and observability. So these need to be in place as well. So to understand where you stand in your journey towards higher data quality, and be able to check that, to have observability, automated monitoring, more advanced monitoring that may in fact itself use AI to manage data quality. And we see here at the bottom, I note that only 11% have implemented end-to-end observability tools. In other words, tools that can understand across the environment. So going through some of the points here, assurance and impact. So focusing on establishing and maintaining trust. So how do you measure trust? How do you define trust? Of course, it will change depending on the application, the use case in the organization. So being able to pull all that together to understand it, so you're not trying to do one size fits all. 66% we see here have metrics, but only 1 in 8 consistently measure metrics and communicate to stakeholders via, for example, a visualization such as a dashboard. So there's a need for formal processes for aligning data quality metrics with business goals. So understanding how they relate again to the use cases and the importance of the data, the relevance of the data, because obviously it varies depending on the circumstance. Clarity and repeatability are key. So here again, organizations often have diverse data quality processes going on, often using different kinds of tools. And so here we ask if you agree with the statement, my company has clear processes, data quality management in place for surfacing data quality issues that are evident in the data and for remediating those issues. And so the best we have here is neutral. So they probably meaning that they do in some cases and not in others, but quite a number disagree. 15% strongly disagree, 24% do agree, and 5% agree. And then about establishing a process. So we can see here down in the second chart I have here, we asked, does your company or my company has established processes that address the need to manage data assets in accordance with principles of trustworthiness, privacy, ethics, fairness, equity, anti-bias, transparency, accountability, and or safety. So of course, the number of considerations there are expanding as organizations get into AI and start to apply AI and to customer interactions and customer analytics. And so we can see here again that the majority are saying either no, or they currently are investigating how to do this. So that's kind of where things stand right now. And so just some of the points here. C-level sponsorship is key. So you want to get the upper management in your organization to get behind and understand the importance of data quality, establishing the enterprise-wide coordinating council and cooperating team. Again, understanding that one size does not fit all. You're going to need probably smaller subcommittees to address different parts of the organization, but it's good to have that holistic group that's getting together to understand how it's affecting the entire organization. Collaborative data stewardship, policy management. So assigning data stewards who are really focused on data quality in particular, and often data governance as well. And so make sure they are understanding the policies and can communicate it to other users. They can be someone who's in development, in IT, sometimes in the business group. So you might need all of them to kind of come together. So different types of data stewards. Leveraging a data catalog, a shared data catalog, data lineage tools. So understanding the whole process of how the data entered the organization, what's happened to the data, who's using the data. So data lineage tools are really great at bringing that together. Often they're part of data catalog solutions. Centralized policy and rules library. In other words, again, bringing all these systems together. And then aim for collaborative workflows and use observability. So see how these things fit together to make sure that they're interacting, because often one quality process may depend on another one, particularly in ETL or ELT scenarios, and have observability to be able to solve problems as they come up. So fourth is the data quality process automation. So again, we're talking a lot about automation today. So we ask here, my company has tools in place to ensure that the data and analytics inputs being used in analytics models can be trusted. So that whether you have tools and processes in place, again, neutral is the highest, but we do see here that about a third, or I guess it's, 30, exactly a third, 33% either strongly disagree or disagree, with 27% can agree. So again, room for improvement there. And then the second chart I have here, my organization has implemented operational tools that automate data quality management processes, such as data profiling, all the processes that I've mentioned. And again, here we see that the highest answer is no, but they're planning to put them in place. And then also we see that no, the company does not currently have plans in place. So in other words, most organizations are moving forward with automation. They're not as far as they would like to be. They're investigating the tools. So some points here to take advantage of data quality innovation. There's a lot of innovation going on really just even this year in applying AI-infused automated capabilities and tools to improve data quality. Make full use of data catalogs, metadata management, business glossaries, all of that kind of stuff that you may have in your organization that may be diverse in your organization, trying to pull that together to improve data quality management, and deploy the modern tools and platforms to improve the orchestration of these processes. So be thinking always about how they all fit together from a more holistic perspective. My last chart is really just about enhancing data insights from analytics. How do you do that? Well, focusing on an analytics system, data warehouses, analytics, data marts, systems that are supporting more advanced analytics such as AI in your system, in your organization. Quality should be a top priority among all the data scientists and data engineers. I'm sure they're concerned about it, so it should be a top priority to set up the processes and also have the tooling for data quality management. Increase data literacy training to guide users to modernize their practices. That often many organizations, it means getting away from spreadsheet use for data quality, which we see in our research is still fairly common. In fact, right here we see 30% saying too much reliance on spreadsheets. In the chart I have here, data quality and completeness inadequate. That's the key hindrance in organizations to timely data insights and answering business questions and solving problems. 50% noting that. Fragmentation, a key problem. Governance, obviously. And then we see here too much reliance on spreadsheets. And then align data quality management with data governance. So often a lot of the same tooling is being used, same processes can be used, and also data quality and protecting the data often kind of go together in organizations. So it's important to align these two and have groups that are looking at both areas to see how they come together effectively. All right, so my concluding points, recognizing that data quality management, it is an ongoing journey. It's not a one and done. You're going to have new types of users, new types of data, diverse data. One thing I should have mentioned here is that we see in our research, of course, that most organizations are on top of structured data. As it gets to be more like unstructured data, semi-structured data, a lot of difficulty there. And that's where generative AI and LLMs could be useful in particular to understand patterns in that data, to see where there could be the probability of problems, inconsistencies in the data. So maturation begins with a good planning. So that's often the planning, which of course in itself is going to be an ongoing process. Define roles and responsibilities, especially for data stewardship, is key to drive it forward and to have people understanding what they need to do, what their role is in solving data quality problems. Aim to be proactive and not reactive. So reactive meaning problems, suddenly it's a fire drill and you got to figure out how to solve it. Better to be proactive and use AI-infused tools that are very effective for this to improve data quality before it becomes a monster problem. Invest in modern tools and platforms to enable data quality modern automation, is critical. Overcoming silos. And so often the legacy tools are stuck in silos. So it's good to sort of look at that situation, apply modern tools so you can overcome the silos, have a better holistic understanding of data quality processes and practices and technologies, how they fit together, and use the tools for orchestration and observability, encourage collaboration across platforms, and then accelerating data insights by analytics by developing data literacy training so that all users understand the role of data quality management in improving their insights and improving the value of the data to the business. Okay, with that, Andrew, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dave. That was a great presentation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Paul Watson-Gover with WhereScape. Paul has been working in BI and data warehousing for over 25 years, with almost 20 of those years spent delivering data warehouse solutions with WhereScape's software across a broad range of database technologies and utilizing a range of different data warehouse methodologies. While he is certified in dimensional modeling, Data Vault, and Data Vault 2.0, Paul wholeheartedly embraces a pragmatic rather than dogmatic approach to building a data warehouse that is driven by a passion for ensuring the customer gets what they need when they need it. With that, please welcome Paul. And Paul, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay. So to give you a short introduction to WhereScape, in case you're not familiar with what we do. We are a data warehouse automation company. We focus on providing automation that is practical and useful and importantly configurable. We've been around for a long time now, since 2001, founded in New Zealand by a couple of consultants who were traveling around implementing the same thing over and over again and decided to build some software to help with that. Who benefits from this? Well, anyone can benefit from this. Any member of the BI team, the data warehouse team, even DBAs get a mention on this slide. What's really important to point out here, as Andrew just mentioned in reading my bio there, is that people who really benefit from an automation approach are the business users, the people who actually require this data in the first place. Those are key. You need to get those guys on board before you can kick off any kind of data warehouse or even data quality initiative, which is obviously the subject of this webinar. We're an end-to-end solution in terms of a data warehouse, going from upfront design, working with stakeholders to understand what they want to build, right through to building on the target platform of your choice, following ELT principles. This just limits the number of touch points that are required, although it doesn't eliminate them all, obviously. This is just a quick overview of our solutions that we have. We have two tools. One's called 3D, which is our design tool. One called Red, which is our build tool. And WhereScape DVE, which stands for Data Vault Express, is a combination of those things geared towards helping you rapidly deliver a data vault solution, if that's your preference. We're platform agnostic. The tools themselves are metadata driven, and using that metadata in combination with templates, we are able to support many, many different platforms. And when a new platform comes along, such as recent ones like Databricks and Microsoft Fabric, we're able to spin up new template packs quite quickly and support those because no actual product changes are required. We work across a broad range of industries. I've probably worked on projects in each of these sectors over my time with WhereScape and previously as a customer of WhereScape. It really doesn't matter ultimately what your data is, where it's coming from. If you're looking to build a data warehouse, you should bring some automation to that process, and we can help with that regardless of your industry. This is just some examples of some of the customers that we've got across the globe. And that's it, really. This slide says product demonstration, but I'm not doing one of those today. We're just focusing on this chat about data quality. So back to you, Andrew.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much, Paul. And now it's time for our fireside chat. So I'll ask that Dave rejoin us. And Dave, I'll pass it back to you now to begin the discussion.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Dave.
So maybe we'll just talk first about what are some of the big problems and challenges that you see. I mean, you interact with a lot of organizations. What are they confronting around data quality and trust in analytics systems?
Well, the fun thing is this question has been a constant throughout my entire career. And one of the biggest challenges, which doesn't ever go away, is defining what data quality means in the first place, right? It's quite a broad term, and it all comes down to how deep you want to go as to what the challenges are that you face. One thing that I'm very what's the word I'm looking for? Very strong on, I guess, in terms of my opinion, is where data quality should be handled, and that is not in the data warehouse. It should be identified there for sure, right? You bring your data in, you need tools and techniques for identifying that you've got data quality issues, but you shouldn't be fixing them in the warehouse. It's the wrong place. You need a mechanism of feeding that back round to the business owners in order for them to fix that data at source if you're looking to implement that. And as I say, these are this is the age-old problem that's been there forever, and it doesn't seem like it's going away. In fact, if anything, there's a potential for it to get worse. You've talked quite a bit about AI in your presentation, and obviously with AI, as we saw with things like IoT, AI potentially brings a further exponential growth in the amount of data that you're going to be looking at and trying to figure out whether it's good quality or not. And so that will bring a whole new load of challenges to businesses. And I think also, just to pick up on something you mentioned during your presentation as well, you need to resist this temptation to just say, just let AI figure it out.
Right.
That's just not going to work. You still need that human element. And even us as an automation vendor, we still say, well, you need those human touch points, right? You're not going to get away from those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that expression, automation complacency, because I think that's natural for people to think, oh, it's solved. We've got a tool, we've got AI, and it could never be more important. Yeah, it seems in data quality, I think, to make sure humans are on top of that, or else it could exacerbate problems actually. So,
absolutely.
However, that said, I think that seems like we're seeing a lot of interest, and we saw in our research here in data automation, automation and AI-driven automation. So what do you see as some of the important trends? I mean, at WhereScape and just generally in the industry about where automation is going and the role of AI in that automation?
Well, obviously, one of the things we're seeing, again, to pick up on something you've mentioned, is the data governance tools. So, the likes of Microsoft Purview or Calibra, Alation, these tools are becoming quite prominent, and they're kind of important for that piece, the data quality piece, because they are another part that should be owned by the business. And it's their data, so they're the ones who need good quality data. Being able to support additional languages, our tools traditionally focused on generating just pure SQL, and many other, all the other automation tools in the space, the same thing. But actually now you need to be able to also generate the likes of Python or Spark SQL, for example. To help with some, not only the analytics, the advanced analytics stuff, but also for the data quality part, right? Because there's so much more, those languages are so much more feature rich and have more things that you can do around the data quality piece. So these automation tools need to be able to handle that as well. As for the AI piece, I'm not really sure where that fits. We've seen obviously attempts at the analytics end, so the far end. Hopefully by the time you've already sorted out all your data and structured it into some kind of warehouse. We've actually seen an AI-based tool for generating data vault models by training the model to understand sources, and but again, even that tool requires human input, right, to feed it back and keep going around in that cycle until you get a good model. I'm not entirely sure about that yet, but we'll see. It's early days, as it is with all things AI at the moment. Even though it's been around for a long time, the recent explosion is still early days, I would say. So I'm not 100% certain where AI brings value at this point, but I have no doubt that it will over time.
So like for the data vault model, you might be able to get a sort of a first cut of the design.
Yeah, that's the idea. And then to refine it by providing feedback, which is important for anything AI, frankly. If you don't have that feedback loop, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And to be able to set up the feedback loop. And yeah, I think you're right that all great points about the different languages that are being used and just the sheer scale of the data. And then you mentioned IoT being one in particular. Organizations are drawing in a lot of data from sensors these days, and sensors, log files, things like that. So lots of different types of systems that are just, a fire hose of data, basically.
Yeah. And how much of it is actually useful as well? This is an important thing, I think, that's missed in the data quality question. And that's why I go back to your first question and the point about your definition of data quality, right? Because I certainly see lots of people just pulling in data because it's there.
Right.
So if you then, which obviously then adds time, and if you start worrying about the quality of that data that you're pulling in just because it's there, whether if you haven't asked yourself, should I be pulling in this data in the first place, then you're just making more and more problems for yourself.
Yeah, and in a way, that's something that quality processes can be helpful with, because if the quality is not adequate for what the purpose is, or if the data really isn't relevant, it could be through these automated processes that you can figure that out and say, well, we don't need that data. That data is not going to be good enough for us.
Yeah, absolutely, over time. Yeah.
So, thinking of analytics systems, maybe I can ask first just about the future of data platforms. You mentioned Data Vault, but of course everybody's got data warehouses, data lakes, data lake houses. It's evolving, I guess, towards probably most organizations having all of these, all of the above. And how does that impact the evolution of how people are thinking about trust and data quality?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Some people definitely do have all of the flavors of, of data warehouse, or however you wish to term it. We've heard before that the data warehouse is dead when when Hadoop and the whole big data thing came along, and clearly that wasn't the case. And I personally still don't think that's the case. I'm not the only person to say this. I've heard others in the industry say this as well. So data warehouse isn't going away. We've seen, obviously, you mentioned data lake and data lake house. You've also got things like data mesh, which has come in. Now I see that as the latest in the whole centralization, decentralization cycle, which I've seen a number of times now during my career. So is that an evolution? I don't know, but I think all these things, as they come along, they do impact both quality and trust. One of the big things that we're seeing at the moment are putting query engines directly on top of these data lakes and data lake houses. So iceberg tables, for example, is an interesting example of that. But that's very new, and how scalable and performant actually is that technology right now? I think not as much as it needs to be, and it will take a while for that to bed in and become truly useful.
I think that's a great point. That progress towards iceberg, and try to pull all the data together, the transactional data, analytics data, to make it easier to get to all of it. However, could be issues of quality across all of that data.
And that's everybody has joked in the past, right, about data lakes and actually calling them data swamps. Well, this is why the data warehouse still is around, and structuring the data that you need, because if you just dump all of your data into one big bucket and then try and figure out through iceberg tables or whatever, I just don't see that being a real thing. I'm not sure either that just chucking AI on top of that particularly helps that either, at least not at this point, not without a lot of feedback with your LLM, so that it can understand the data that's in there, and importantly what you're looking for, right? There's the reason the data warehouse exists is because you, as a business leader, business user, whatever, have a question about your business that you need answering so that you can run your business better. That's why data ends up structured, because it's only actually small amounts of that data that are required to answer that question. So I certainly don't think we're going to see a revolution, but you use the right word in evolution. I think this will change, but I'm not sure exactly what that looks like right now.
Well, one evolution is from ETL, and you mentioned in your WhereScape discussion that ELT is really a focus. So is that process, how's that going? And then,
Good. Yeah, I mean, the platforms themselves have become so much more powerful, and particularly with cloud-based platforms like Snowflake and Databricks coming along, the ability to process much more data, albeit still in the kind of traditional database format. But they've become so much more powerful that you don't need to offload that data to some other engine and have it do the processing anymore. You just keep it on the platform. Yeah, that's certainly been an evolution of the last, I don't know, I'm not even sure, 10 years, maybe slightly more, that we've really seen that. And even some of the databases that traditionally you might not have thought were as performant, such as, say, good old SQL Server, for example, that can handle quite a lot of data these days and still perform. Certainly not to the degree of a Teradata box or something like that, but pretty good if you're a smaller organization.
Yeah. And we do see also organizations that the expression, reverse ETL, trying to pull data out of the data warehouse. What's your perspective on that?
Well, for what purpose?
Good question. Well, I think what we've seen is, okay, we've got data in the data warehouse, and maybe the quality isn't perfect in the data warehouse itself, which I think you mentioned it's critical to have good quality in the warehouse. But to pull it out for a specific business application, particularly seeing it in kind of customer engagement and marketing applications, trying to pull customer data out and use that process to set up the data more specifically for those applications.
Yeah, I mean that's always been an important part of any warehouse, obviously, getting the data out for various, but not just for reporting. Yeah. But also for feeding back into the system via for file-based exports. Obviously, for apps and things, you're looking at API access to the data so that you can then use it for other things. That's always been there. And I think that's where a lot of the temptation comes from, to fix it in the warehouse, to handle data quality in the warehouse. But you really have to resist that temptation. It's not good, because it's always broken. If you fix it in the warehouse or handle it in the warehouse, but don't ever feed that back, well, then it's always broken. And so you always need that feedback mechanism
to make it the system of record and sort of the golden source. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to report it out. You've got to know how to identify this is bad quality versus good quality, so that you can then have a mechanism that says, well, grab all that bad quality stuff, chuck it in a file, chuck it in a report, whatever, and send it to wherever it needs to go, so that somebody can deal with it via some proper processes.
Right.
Not just write some SQL that says, I'll take this and turn it into something else.
Right. And a lot of organizations have thousands of those SQL routines you're talking about.
They do indeed. Yeah. Or Excel spreadsheets, as you've mentioned already.
Yeah, it's surprising in our research, how much spreadsheets are still used, particularly for data quality, to sort of monitor it. Yeah.
Well, I have always joked that it's also the world's leading BI tool, right?
It's true.
People still use it for that. Yeah.
And for some things, it's a good tool. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But it obviously has its drawbacks. So we're thinking about AI models, organizations developing AI models. They're trying to understand the data that goes into the modeling processes, understand things like data drift, how the data may have changed since the model was created, and just sort of understanding where the problems and flaws are there. Are you seeing that as a issue in data quality and that tools can address?
Yeah, I think that one of the problems with the whole AI thing is, if you want to throw AI into the solving the data quality problem, well, AI itself has a data quality problem. If you've been around data warehousing, then you will have heard the term garbage in, garbage out, right? So if your AI model is getting garbage in, then you can't possibly expect it to produce good outcomes when trying to train it to deal with your data quality. Right? So I'm maybe not explaining this right, but you've essentially then end up with two layers of garbage in.
Yeah.
if that makes sense, right? So
Too much sense. Yeah.
I think that's probably the real challenge for bringing AI into this picture, because if you, like with the obvious example that I picked up on and plagiarizing this from someone is, an AI doesn't know anything, right? An LLM doesn't know anything other than what we tell it knows. So, for example, if we told it the Earth is flat, it thinks the Earth is flat. That's it, right? There is no alternative, and you can apply that to your data warehouse's data quality problems as well. If you tell it that it's that, well, then it thinks it's that. It doesn't know until you give it a bit more context, a bit more information. So, yeah, that's my concern with bringing AI into all of this.
Yeah, and I think even thinking about that, I mentioned, abuse being an issue, and
yes, absolutely.
And I think we are going to see cases of that where, unfortunately, there's intentional abuse that can feed into, AI and then into the data quality issues that organizations are trying to solve. That maybe sort of running after a problem that either doesn't exist or just like that. But we got to change our system to say that the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, not to mention, of course, the whole hallucination problem, right? If your data quality AI starts hallucinating, how do you identify that? And if you start making business decisions based on that, could be in real trouble.
Well, I think data quality and data governance often, at least organizations want them to go together. Do you see that happening in organizations, or are they sort of separate considerations? And how should they be brought together, you think?
I think one of the problems is, from what I've seen, data quality, it seems to be solved as a technical problem, not a business problem. And whereas data governance then becomes more of a business problem. And that's why you have these governance tools, right? Because they're just trying to push that governance out to the business. But when it comes to data quality, I think a lot of it, like I said, a lot of the time it's dealt with as a technical problem. And so you have techie people trying to deal with it when it should be the business. Because you can't make those decisions as a developer. It's not your place to make those decisions. That's what I've seen that. How prevalent that is, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think at TWWC, and I mentioned there was really number one, the roles and responsibilities, and trying to get stakeholders together. That should include business stakeholders.
Absolutely should. Yeah. It's their data. It's not the IT department's data. It's the business stakeholders' data. It belongs to them. If you're building a data warehouse, then that belongs to the business. It doesn't belong to IT. It's their product. It's their data. It's their ability to make decisions for the good of the business that's impacted. If that's not the case, you shouldn't be building a warehouse.
Yeah. So really, the considerations. There's a lot of concern about obviously protecting data, avoid penalties and things like that feed into data governance. But really, some of the those kinds of that level of concern, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, should be on data quality as well.
Yep.
Yeah. From the business side. Yeah. Okay. Andrew, you know what? I see a lot of good questions coming in from the audience. I know we've got a lot to address there, so maybe I should hand it over to you at this point just to get into those questions.
Yeah, sure thing. And thank you both for that great discussion there. I think that was really informative. And we do have several questions here from the audience, so I'll get started with this one here. Paul, this obviously first one will be for you. But okay. Dave, of course, over the course of these questions, if you have any thoughts you'd like to share, please do so.
Sure.
Okay. So, Paul, how do we determine which aspects of data quality management are best suited for automation versus manual oversight?
God, that's a tough question to answer. Well, automation is all about patterns, right? So I guess that would be my my first attempt at an answer to that question is where there are patterns that can be applied, then automation is a good fit, right? That's certainly what we apply to the data warehouse automation stuff that we do with our software, right? It's if you have a repeatable pattern, well then configure some automation to repeat that pattern for you. And you could definitely apply that to data quality as well. There are certain things where it's very pattern based, so you could certainly apply automation to data quality in that sense. But there are also always things that are edge cases, or you're only going to see once or twice. In that case, you shouldn't be trying to automate those. You're wasting your time. You just need to have a more manual process to deal with those things. I hope that answers the question in some way.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that too. That I was going to say the same things. Things that are repeatable, where you can find inconsistencies in the data, profiling the data, particularly vast amounts of data. Maybe those explicit things that are repeatable, and then you can find patterns. That's where the automation would be very effective. But Paul, I agree with you that I think there are some things that may try to apply automation that really is just it's not shortening the process, it's not making it easier. Yeah.
All right, terrific. We'll move on to the next question here. Paul, again, we'll start with you. What are some quick wins for organizations just beginning to integrate data quality management with automation?
Quick wins. I'm not sure. I think possibly coming back to what Dave just said there around profiling, doing some profiling on the data, identifying some of these patterns. Yeah, it's hard to say because it is such a broad topic. Yeah, I'm struggling to come up with a quick win on this question.
Well, I think that maybe if companies are trying to set up, for example, a data warehouse to support financial reporting, it'll help them. The automation might help them certainly understand the quality of the data that they're trying to feed into that data warehouse. Again, getting back to what you said before in our discussion about not making the data warehouse the place that you're solving quality issues that you should have.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I guess tying into another point about looking at the right data first off. So don't go looking for data quality issues in the first line of someone's address if it's not important for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Identify those things, as you just said, Dave. If it's financial reporting, start in looking in the financial data. Find the right data that you really need, and look at there first.
And it might give you some visibility into the source issues too. I think, that could be a good issue, because often it just takes forever to try to get back to, okay, where did this data even come from? Why is it we're having quality issues and not going to be? Usually, it's traced back to the source. It seems, at least we've seen in our research. So, yeah.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to the next question here. Dave, this one actually is for you. Came in during your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So this person writes, we went through a data migration and data corrections are subsequently handled at the business unit level, with each unit making corrections as they see fit, but always going through a validation committee. We have a data quality team that does not participate in corrections process, but only profiles data. How can we gain more visibility and integrate data quality into the process? Of course, Paul, if you have any thoughts after Dave speaks, go right ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think first of all, that sounds like you're on your journey. I mean, that's fantastic progress. Paul, maybe you have some thoughts while I sort of put together my thoughts on this. Yeah.
Well, I wish I did.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a long question. I'm not even sure I can remember it.
I think that you think about what are people trying to do with the data. If it's heavily in the analytics, they're usually bringing in lots of different or multiple data sources at least. So we do see, like, most data quality kind of, I guess, I use the word legacy. Some people say legacy means what works in the organization, but in any case, it's the older systems that usually are focused on, might be BI reporting, financial reporting, but users wanting to get past that to do more, touch different types of data to understand maybe customer patterns and things like that. So there's going to be challenges in terms of the validation processes you may have set up to how to handle new types of data. And so just as we were talking about, the quality, the ability of the tools to help you see patterns and see repeatable issues and those that can be automated, I think also with just the processes itself, what can be repeated across different sources of data, not all of them, but some. So I think that would be a way to build it. And I think you're talking about visibility, I think on the business side, certainly you want to champion wins that you have in the organization. I mean, often data quality wins kind of are not spoken of in organizations. It's sort of quietly like, oh, the technical people solved that problem, but that technical solution may have saved the company, a lot of money, a lot of pain, a lot of, reputational damage. So it should be championed in the organization.
Yeah, I think so. Now I see the question. I think I probably do have something to say. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it's handled at the business unit level, with each unit making corrections as they see fit. That in itself is a data quality problem, right? And that's why governance exists over the top of that, because often data is cross business unit. Doesn't just service one business unit. So if one business unit says this should look like this, but then the other business unit actually says, well, no, we think it should look like this, then whose responsibility is it to correct it? If you don't have governance over the top of that says, hey, both you business units are wrong, it actually should look like this, then that's going to give you some real challenges. Is there any comment I would make on that?
All right, well done. Yeah, that was a long question, so thanks for going through that with me. I think we have time for one more question here. Paul, we'll start with you on this one. Can you share some examples of how automation has helped improve data quality in real-world scenarios?
Yeah, well, from our point of view, and obviously what we're talking about with our software and the automation, it's about surfacing them quickly. Right. This is also a problem that's been around forever. It can take too long to get to these points. I have a funny story of where I was working with one of my colleagues. We were asked to replicate an existing report. We pulled in all the data we needed. We're tallying it up against theirs, and our figures were different to theirs. It turned out that theirs were produced on an Excel spreadsheet, good old Excel again, and there was a gap in their report, and it turned out that the values that were in that row had actually been hidden by making the font white, but the number at the bottom of the report actually added up to the value of all the numbers, including the ones you couldn't see. So but we got there really quickly, so we were able to identify that very, very quickly and make suggestions for change. So it's a big thing in data warehousing and data quality, and anything is you do need to get there as quickly as possible, identify these things as quickly as possible, so that you have enough time to do these iterations before the next thing comes up. That's my opinion on that.
All right, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, this leaves us with no time remaining today, so please give me a moment to thank our speakers. We do, of course, hear from David Stodder with TDWI and Paul Watson-Gover with WhereScape. Would also like to thank WhereScape once again for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar. We'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. And finally, for those unfamiliar, TDWI hosts in-person educational events. Our next one is TDWI Transform West in Las Vegas, taking place in February 23rd through the 28th. And as a value webinar attendee, we're offering each and every one of you $100 off any event package. Please check your post-webinar communications for a unique discount code and a link to further details. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.